Welcome to Entrepreneur School, Carla. I'm very excited and also terrified about this conversation because we're talking all things numbers, and myself included. Lots of us are a little bit nervous to discuss the financial side of our business, to acknowledge that it exists, to use the word budget or any of these things. But you're gonna help shift our minds about this, so I am excited for that reason. Nervous because I'm going to probably admit some things here that are embarrassing for me. So welcome. Let's start there.
Thanks for having me. It will be a total confession episode, so stay tuned because it's going to get juicy. But at the same time, we're going to offer some reframing or, some actionable things you could do to kind of start maybe thinking that the number side of your business could be fun and it's full of potential and it can help you shape the future that you want to have in your business.
Yes, so important. And like we were sort of saying before, like everybody's the expert in their own thing and not the expert at everything. And I teach
Mhm.
people how to promote themselves, and they also feel that nervous and kind of afraid of doing that. And so your version of that is to talk all things finances. So like let's hit the top fears and like where people are at that you have to help shift them to, so that they can really get a hold of the numbers, because this is such an important part of running a business.
Absolutely. It's the thing that will get you out of business fastest. And people don't realize that because if you don't have the runway and you don't have money coming in, you'll be out of business before you even got started or you even had the impact you wanted to have. That's why the numbers are such an important aspect of what we do. But does anybody actually teach you how to do numbers in a business? No, they don't. But somehow we're expected to be good at it. How is that possible? Just like everything that we need to learn, we got to invest time and put some effort into it in order to get better at it. And there's ways that you can easily start to shape a different financial future for your company by starting to think forward instead of just backwards or in the past. Now, you asked me, what are some of the common things that people come to us for that are maybe issues or like they're in their head, thinking, I can't do this. One of them is really like mindset around their personal finances and they're bringing that to their business. So it's maybe bad habits or things that are no longer serving them. And they're like, well, that's how I manage my money personally. So I'm going to manage the same way in the business. And they realize, oh, this is not actually working well for me. So, how do we start to shape a different direction and offer some reframing around? Money management and money habits. One can be as simple as just start looking at your numbers. And I know that that's a big one. People don't want to even look, right? Because they're afraid what they're going to see. What if we reframed it as at least now we know the starting point and whether or not we're actually going to make progress going forward if something changes. But
Hmm.
if you didn't know where you started, how would you know if you're doing better or worse than you were before?
Yeah, that's such a good point, actually, because I feel like sometimes, like myself, I can get in my own head feeling like I suck or something is going badly. And that might not even be true. Right.
I
And I don't
had the
even
time
know it. Just like
find it's not.
today I feel like a crappy business owner. So therefore I suck and I must not be making enough money, and all of this comes in. And it's like, where did that come from? It wasn't because I looked at a spreadsheet, because I don't do that. I'm not doing that right now.
Yeah, it's like your fear of looking is taking over rather than actually looking at the numbers and being like, oh, maybe it's not as bad as I thought. Actually, this happens all the time with clients. I start to show them, they're like, you know, that year over year, you actually grew and did this so much better than you did last year. And they're like, what? They're like surprised because they're like, oh, I thought I was doing more stuff. And I'm like, well, but we didn't look at the numbers. How will we know? And
Yeah.
so then we start to bring them like all these aha moments because in reviewing the numbers, we're like, by the way, this month compared to last month actually was a lot better. And seasonally speaking, if next month we expect to be down because seasonally we have a business that maybe performs worse in the next month, we know that because we look at the numbers for the last 2, 3 years and we're like, oh, yeah, that happens every time. We're not surprised when it happens. So we start to give them the storytelling behind the numbers and start to show them the trends and things that maybe they haven't noticed because they haven't looked. And that gives us an advantage because now we know what to expect. We know what path to take. We know how to also make progress if we want to increase the numbers over time, if we want to start to set goals that are appropriate for that growth we want to experience. And we tie that to very actionable, executable steps to take in the business to actually make it happen. It's not just, oh, I want to make $1 million and like good luck. And then you look back and you're like, oh, I didn't make $1 million. What happened? No, it's like we're going to do this 10 things to achieve XYZ revenue goal That could be $50,000. It could be an increase of $10,000 in your overall business. But what are the 10 things you're going to do in order to achieve that? Are you going to invest in marketing? Are you going to go, more referrals? Are you going to go do an ad campaign? Are you going to, guest on podcasts? Like, what is your actual actions and things that you're in control of in order to make this happen, rather than just putting a number out there and wishing and hoping, which we always say, winging it is not a plan, hope is not a strategy, and executions where all dreams go to die, or lack of executions where all dreams go to die. So keeping that in mind, we want to know, what are we doing? How are we going to achieve the goal? And is it realistic once we take all those action steps?
Yes, that is golden right there. I'm like going to make a note of that quote that you just said because I like it a lot. And now I'm thinking like, okay, how can we unpack this a little bit more in terms of translating your goals into the spreadsheets and the financial side of things?
Mm-hmm.
Because I picked up on a couple of examples that you just shared, like if you're going to hit your goals, maybe you're actually needing to invest in marketing or do something that's going to cost you money, as well as planning for revenue generation. So can you share a little bit about what that might look like?
Yeah. So in developing our plan forward looking, we want to start to consider the variables and inputs that will make that a reality. So let's say we want to grow the business by $20,000, and whatever the time frame is, doesn't matter. Just assume you have a time frame in mind that you want to hit this by. And then you say, okay, I know what has worked in the past that's generated business for me. First of all, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. I think a lot of people are working too hard and not smarter. Go look at your last year's numbers and say, why was April so good? What did we do in April, or what did we do in March for April to be so good? And then start to kind of think about what were the activities that drove that increase. And then say to yourself, can I do double of that, triple of that? What does it look like to 10x that activity or that investment I did, or whatever was the drove that increase? And then will that help me get to the $20,000 increase goal that I have? And then you lay out the plan on what is it going to cost you to invest in that activity. Maybe it's you hire a coach, or you invested in the ad strategy, or whatever it is. Maybe you just went to more networking events.
Yeah.
Like, it could be as simple as using your time instead of your money. So it could be a component of, I just took the time and maybe bought a few tickets to events, and that yield business. So knowing about what are those steps and what are you doing, it starts to tell you, okay, well, each event I went to cost me $100 to get in. I'm going to do 5 of them, or now I'm going to do 10 of them, 15 of them. So now you know your cost of investing. Now, the other piece that I find business owners forget about this whole thing is, where's the money to fund all these activities? If you haven't had money saved in the bank already, which we highly recommend that you do, keep some kind of runway in your business. Doesn't matter how much, but at least have something saved. Then maybe you're pulling from that to, help support these activities. And if you don't, then that's where you need to start thinking about, am I okay with having debt in the business, or leveraging some sort of debt instrument in a responsible financial way that I know I'm going to pay back and off when I make this additional $20,000. And also, I have a plan that if I don't make that money, how am I going to pay this debt back, so that we're not carrying it over and over again? Ideally, doing those activities have yield results in the past, so it's not as high risk because you have done it before and it has worked. And maybe out of 10 conferences, 2 out of them actually brings you, paying clients, or allows you to sell your products. Fantastic. Now you know that you at least will get at least that much, and hopefully be able to pay off the debt, or have even more than you expected, and maybe hit your $20,000 goal. But that's how we start to connect the dots and map out the activities and things that we need to do. And also not forget about the cash flow side of it, which I see a lot of times happens. They're just not saving for it, not planning for it, and they're just spending the money nilly-willy on things that are honestly not moving the needle in their business. Like, there's no benefit or return on investment, ROI, coming from those activities, and therefore they're just getting farther and farther behind and farther into debt, and still not achieving that growth that they're wanting to see.
Ooh, okay. There's so many things that you just said there for sure. And I want to say one thing, like to address the willy-nilly spending, because I think from a marketing perspective, what we know to be true is that there are people who are more emotional buyers, and people who are
Mm-hmm.
more informed. It takes you a long time to make a decision. You probably actually did look at your spreadsheet or your credit card balance or something before you decided this is the
Mm-hmm.
thing that's going to work for me. And I'm the first one. So I sometimes I can see the vision, connect the dots between here's an opportunity and something that I want to invest in, and I've
Yeah.
invested a lot in a lot of different things for my business too. And sometimes it's because the offer is such a almost no brainer, right? It's like a low ticket. But then you're stacking up these like 77, 47. And then for me, I'm converting all of that times 30% because it's US dollars and I like am in Canadian dollars most of the time. So it all stacks up and it's like, oh, how did that like $1,000 just accumulate in a
Mhm.
month when it wasn't like a super intentional, like, you could put that together to make one bigger investment that probably would have ROI. And so what I'm hearing you say there too is part of the issue is that we're not actually evaluating those things that we're spending the money on. So because if you are in a position where you don't have like last year to look back on and go, this is what worked well for making money at first. How do I allow myself to experiment with some new things? And like this is really aligning actually with what I teach in a program I have called the Visibility Revolution, where I actually essentially give you the guided strategy on how to experiment on what's going to bring you the most ROI
Yeah,
for your marketing and your visibility. So is it going to be a networking event or what is it going to be? Right. And so like, how do
exactly.
you allow yourself that, space to invest and experiment? And I'm guessing your answer is partly your own risk tolerance as well. Expand on that for me.
Absolutely. Is risk tolerance cash available? Honestly, like let's be honest about the real conversation is, can you afford it? Like, do you have the money to be able to go to these things? Or are you willing to take the risk and take the debt out to go try it out? And we're big on experimenting. We just don't find it helpful when people go all in and like they spend $20,000 on this one-time thing they never has proven results before, and they're like, that will work and it's great and I'm going to make all this extra money above and beyond my investment. And we say, well, is there a scaled down version of that we can do first to make sure it's actually driving some momentum or results? And then we go invest a big amount once we know it actually works. And sometimes the answer is like, no, we just have to do it and like see. And what I don't see happen often is people one evaluating between different options, which is, scenario planning and ROI, return on investment, expectations, and then setting up what are those expectations when you make this investment. Like take a moment to think, like pause before you hit purchase and say, I expect this 5 things to be true about this investment. I want to gain this much visibility. I want to network with this type of people, whatever it is that your 5 things are. And then you need to track against that, because in 3 months from now, if that investment hasn't yielded a single one of your list items, you need to reassess whether or not you need to continue that investment. And I think this is where people are not thinking through, like, okay, how long do I give it to work? And if it doesn't work, how do I pivot? Do I exit this investment? Do I continue this investment? But you need to be very intentional when it comes to money decisions, and weighing in the pros and cons of different programs is another aspect of doing that. And you said something really interesting around like you're one of those like impulsive kind of buyers, right? And I get it, because when marketing is good, you're just like, oh, I just have to buy it, right? And I would say like, okay, give yourself one night of sleep, come back to it with fresh eyes. And then if you still think that it's the right thing for your business because you've evaluated, that ROI, go ahead and do it. Take the risk. It's okay. But I always say like sleep on it and you'll be surprised how different of a perspective you might have the next morning.
Yeah, that's really great advice because if anybody's putting that much pressure on you for like a deadline of when something needs to be purchased, then that's just poor marketing etiquette as far as I'm concerned. So the deal will still be there tomorrow. So
Discounts are great. I rather pay full price knowing that I am for sure invested in this. Also, I have the time to commit and devote to executing whatever the things they're telling me I need to do in order to get my ROI back. And that's a big one. I don't know about you, but time is such a precious resource. And sometimes it's even more precious than money. And if you haven't properly carved out the time to work through the program, do the things they tell you you have to do, you probably will not see an ROI on it anyways.
totally. And actually that's so funny because right before I got on this recording with you, I got a message from someone who purchased a program for me 2 years ago. And he is like, hey, I haven't actually logged in and this link isn't working anymore. So could you reset it? Because I would like to
Ouch.
actually do the program now. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, good. Because I was feeling badly because I want people to
Hmm.
consume my stuff and get the value out of it and get the ROI out of it. But if you purchase something and you don't actually have time to do it, but you were like, oh, I'll just do it now because it's a good deal or it's a discount right now, then maybe, well, thank you. I appreciated it on my end as the seller. But yes, that's such a good point. And it's totally fair too. And we should like I almost want to like have this both sides of this conversation, because as people who are creating products and offers, we also should feel very, you know, good and okay about people evaluating spending their money with us, because it makes sense.
Absolutely.
You need to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you want them to have that ROI. You want them to have that good experience, right? But they got to do the work. You're not going to do it for them. You're not going to go to their house, knock on the door, and be like, hey, sit down and do the work. Like, that's not for you to do. You're selling them something of value. Ideally, they're working through it and seeing and generating that value for themselves. But if they're not committed because they didn't properly plan, again, I'm going back to plan. It's all about planning at the end of the day for us. It's you didn't plan for the time it takes. And I always ask that question all the time of any programs I'm evaluating. What is the time commitment expected in order for me to get results? And if you're not asking that question, I suggest you put it all over whenever you're evaluating those options, because that's going to be a key component of how invested do I need to be in this for us to generate results? And if a program comes back and says it's 20 hours a week, I'll be like, well, maybe that's not the right program for me right now because I don't have those 20 hours to devote to it. Or maybe I am, yes, absolutely, because I've been waiting for the right thing to invest my time in that will help drive, exponential results for me. And I'm committed to spending the 20 hours it takes to get there. And that's an exaggeration, but my point being, like, whatever that number is, you need to say to yourself, yes, I actually do have that time to invest in this to get those results I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yes, this is all very good. Can you give some tips and tricks for like getting started if I know there's like a scale of people who are listening to this that are like on one end, when you think of the word spreadsheet, you like hide underneath a blanket and you don't look at it ever. To the other end, or you're like, okay, I incorporate this into my life at least once a month or something like that, because that's, I'm actually following along. So for those of us on, the end of the spectrum where we're hiding under the blanket, how do we get started with getting reacquainted with our numbers?
Yeah. What I find fascinating is we work with a lot of clients who definitely shy away from the numbers. Like that's very common. And that's why they seek support, because sometimes you just can't do it alone. And that's okay. We're here for them. If you're doing this on your own, I think my job or my goal for you is really to not be looking at your numbers that often, because you actually know you need to take the action and the steps and execute on your plan because you're clear on what the plan is. But if you didn't take that initial time to make that plan, that's where it comes harder because now you have to look at your numbers more. So if you just want to like stay away from the spreadsheets, like make sure you make that upfront investment instead. And then you could just look for 5 minutes and move on. But for those of you who like even the word spreadsheet just makes you crawl out of your skin, I say you might want to try different versions of looking at a spreadsheet. For example, we do a lot of visual dashboards for our clients because we know that not everybody loves to look at 200 numbers on a spreadsheet. They might want to look at a graph that tells them a lot about what's happening, and they actually might enjoy it better and might be able to see even more trends and things that are useful for them because they're not shying away from the graph. And so that's one thing that you could start to think about. It's like, what systems or programs are giving me what I need to encourage me to look at my numbers because it's a little bit easier. And we're all about making it easy and simple around here. We do not want to complicate finances. They're already complex enough. We don't need to add to that. And that is one of the ways that we do it. Another way that you can kind of simplify things maybe is just look at these four numbers for your profit and loss statement. And that is the revenue line, the cost of goods sold if you have a product-based business, or maybe some labor that helps you deliver services for your clients and paying customers, your expense line, and your profit. And if nothing else, just look at the profit. Like that's the one thing that we want to be understanding and knowing what's happening with. It's all the money you generated, but how much of it actually was left behind? This is the conversation that a lot of times is not happening out there, especially not in social media. You hear people saying, I made $1 million. And I'm like, well, did it cost you $1 million to make the $1 million? If so, I'm not interested because it's a break-even business. I don't want it. So that's the piece of where we need to flip the conversation and be like, what is left behind after we pay everything? And if we're currently at a loss, we need a plan to shift over to being positive, break even first and then positive in our profitability so we can stay in business longer and have the impact we want to have. And if you don't know how to do that, that is something absolutely can help support. But just know that these are the important numbers that you need to be looking at. So if you look at nothing else, start to, baby steps towards it, right? To not
Mhm.
shy completely away from it.
Yeah. I love that you were like, first of all, I love the idea of the visual graphics instead of just even the spreadsheets. Because that in of itself, like the actual way it's presented, can be a big
Huge.
like a deterring factor. But the other deterring factor is just like the fact that you think that you're faced with some sort of failure
Mm.
if your
Let's talk about that.
numbers aren't what you want them to be, right?
Yeah, that's a big one we deal with a lot. And we give this reframe to clients sometimes. We say, there is this over here that's the entity of your company, your business. That might not be performing as well as we want it to be. Does that mean you as a person are terrible or don't know how to run a business? Not necessarily. There is sometimes situations and things that happen, around us that we don't have control over that makes our business look like crap. And we're just like, ew, like we don't like that. And then there's things you as a person can do to help move the business forward in a different direction and try new things and do the test that we talked about, investing in new areas to help the business move forward and be happier and be looking better as far as results go, that then gives you back, a salary and things that we want you to have, cash in the bank, paying yourself well, having good profits. But I just want to encourage you to think about your business as its own little entity, and then you happen to work for it and you happen to own it. But that is not a reflection on who you are as a person, good, bad, amazing or not. Like, you're still you, and then you happen to own this business that, again, might be good, might be bad, doesn't, as long as we have a plan to fix it. That's kind of where I want to go with the
Mm.
number side of it.
That's such a good one because we can tie our personal worth and value so much up into the results that our business is financially creating. But you know what? I
Mhm.
actually heard the other day that like Uber has never been profitable, right? Like,
Is
and
that shocking to you? Like,
well, not really, but because you think of it as it's a recognizable brand,
totally.
right? And
Yeah.
it's a
Doesn't mean
huge
they're making money.
company. Exactly. And so that doesn't mean like we're making some associations without looking at
Hmm.
the back end of something. Not that you have to look at the back end of every business, but that to me, I was like, huh. And like they don't plan on being profitable for like 20 some years until they're actually,
Crazy, right? You're
yeah,
like, how do they survive? Oh, they have a lot of investors, but that's a
yeah,
separate
yeah, different
conversation.
structure.
But yeah, exactly. Because there's someone funneling cash into the business to keep it surviving. And, we know it's a recognizable brand. There's other components in that. But you as a business owner obviously don't have that kind of access. And that's okay because, you want to make sure that you're focused on that profit. And it's why I want to shift the conversation from revenue to profit. And not saying that revenue is bad. We want to grow revenue over time. But if we're growing revenue and then growing expenses at the same rate or higher,
Mhm.
and we're making less profit than when we were smaller, making less revenue, is it really worth it? At times that scaling can be hard. And on the other side of it, there's absolutely reward of higher profits, and that can maybe sustain a certain lifestyle. But you got to be careful about managing that to make sure that you're not worse off than where you started. That was so much better because you were way more profitable. And so something we measure very carefully. And again, we just want to go back to shifting the conversation, especially around social media, right? Of revenue, revenue, revenue. And I'm like, tell me what's your profit, and tell me, are you paying yourself from your business? Because those are the type of things we need to be thinking about when we're running a business.
Yes, and just to wrap up what you're saying there, that message that a lot of coaches are particularly touting around their business is they're often talking about revenue and not profit and not getting paid. And so, like you said, a lot of them especially spend money on ads and they spend like 75% of their revenue on
Mm-hmm.
ads. And then there's other expenses. So yeah, if you're looking to buy something from someone who's telling you how to make money and they're not actually making profit, then that's an issue. Red flag, red flag.
Well, and worse off because a lot of those coaches, are saying, come to our program. It's expensive because it's good or high quality. And actually, what we're seeing behind the scenes, a lot of the programs really fall short. And you feel like, why did I spend all this money for it? So I just want you to be cautious. Talk to other people, get their honest experience around programs and things, especially when they're expensive, because not every program out there that's expensive is good. They're just really good at marketing.
Yeah.
unfortunately.
And then I'm like, I teach bill and market, but not like that.
But if you're getting your clients results and it's actually helping them move the needle, that's different.
Well,
That's not what I'm talking about.
yeah, and I think what you're saying too around having like I think there's been another round of trend that I'm seeing in people's businesses who people who I've looked at as mentors before as well. They've scaled back in terms of team size and all of that because they just want increased profits. At this point, like they've
Yeah.
done what they needed to do, they built something, they have a reputation, they can create the results, and now they're like, how do I do this like on my own or like completely almost automated so that I'm just making profit.
Yeah.
I'm
Because a
like,
lot of them realize, oh my God, I've made it, quote unquote, made it. And they have nothing to show for it. And I
mhm,
much rather have a smaller business that's keeping 50% in profit, or like, if you're a service based, because we can have that kind of high margins, or even 20% profit as you're scaling, then just scale it for the sake of scaling and then having all this money go out the door and pay everyone else. You're not paying yourself, you're unhappy, you want to quit, and you feel you can't because you have this whole team you have to pay for. It's like this vicious cycle. So if we just start with a good financial habits in the first place where we prioritize profits, owners pay, and making sure that we have a healthy, sustainable long-term business that's making the impact we want to make, then we don't have to worry about fixing issues down the road because we already have the right structure in place.
yes. I've also been there and had the team, and then I've not got the team now. So, and it's again, it's another like mental block to allow yourself to scale back when you look at that scaling as the sign of success and growth, like that you want it to be. And then again, like it's just this message that comes into our minds of like this feeling of failure. So I love all of these
Mm.
reframes that you're providing here. I'm like, what's the actual important thing? Like,
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, to me, it's that we build personal wealth outside of our businesses. We're told the idea that one day we'll sell for millions of dollars because if we grow it, someone will want to buy it. And that's great. That's a path for some business owners. Like 80% of the business owners out there just want to have their business. They want to make money. They want to pay themselves. They want to be here long term to continue to have that impact they want to have because they have the money to do so. And those businesses sometimes never get sold. And so that
yeah,
realization that one day you'll hit it for millions is not necessarily what the sustainable long-term business is. And making sure that you understand what are you, right? Are you going for the big exit? Great. Then, go for the path. Nothing wrong with that. And you might have to sacrifice paying yourself for the next 5 years in order to get there. And that's okay. And some people want to do that. Fantastic. And the rest of us, maybe we just want to have a long-term sustainable business paying ourselves and having profit. And that's totally okay too.
yeah, yeah. So really getting clear on what your own personal goals are and
Exactly.
allowing your version of success to be your version of success.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I
I
love.
like profits. I don't know about you, and I like paying myself. So like that's my definition of success. And
Yeah.
then I want to have the freedom with it too, right?
Yeah.
So like as long as I'm checking those boxes, I'm good. Now, that might not be your definition of success, and that's okay too. We all get to have one.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I like to wrap in a little bit of, my time and my relationships, like with my family, and placing value on that as well, because sometimes that is something that I don't want to say like conflicts with, but like it takes my time to do those things to be able to take my kids to activities and put them in, give them the life that we want them to have and to be here
Exactly.
to walk them to school and to be here when they get home from school in 20 minutes and all of those kinds of things. And that's maybe time that I'm not able to work on my business or for clients. And so I have limited capacity as a
Mhm.
result of that, which can affect my potential income. And I'm okay with that. Right.
Yeah, and those are conscious trade-offs you made to have the life that you want to have and still having a fulfilled career or business that helps others. And I think we have to be very conscious of the season in life we're in.
Yes.
Sometimes we have to dedicate more to our families, and that is a priority. And then you just bake it into your business to do that. Maybe you leave early, but you work at night or the weekends to trade off, but you get to choose that. Nothing is, a have to. Everything is a choice. And we get to do that. And the flexibility, if that's what's important to you and it's key not to have 20 other clients because you want to have the flexibility, totally an option.
Exactly. And I love your mission with your business around empowering business owners to achieve financial clarity and peace of mind. So, thank you for bringing this conversation with that perspective and not like one. I don't feel bad about myself. I was worried I was going to
Yay. You see, I told you it
discover
was going to be great.
we made it. If you all made it, if you were worried here, like I was at the beginning, we made it through. We have a new perspective. I feel better about a lot of things that I was worried about yesterday, to be honest with you. So I appreciate this so
That's
much. Thank you,
great.
Carla.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that because I think a lot of the work that we do, people, are having those reservations. And it's great to hear that in the conversation, we're able to put you at that peace and give you that clarity that you're seeking probably around your numbers and like how do you get started and how do you make improvements without having to stress about it all the time. We want your businesses to be happy, fulfilling vehicles to fuel your life and your dream goals. And you can't do that if you're not paying attention to what's happening in your numbers. So just, offering that as a perspective, as a reframe. We love what we do. We lead with education a lot for that reason, because we want to close that knowledge gap. A lot of business owners do not get proper training on financial management of their business, and that is not their fault. Now, are there resources there? Of course. We want you to connect with us so that we can help support you in that way. But just know you're not alone and it is hard. And we do this for a living. So for us, it's just very enjoyable. And we want you all to kind of, come to that bandwagon and like enjoy it with us because numbers can be fun and they can be great for your business if they start to produce the results you want to see.
Absolutely. Well, I hope that everyone listening was very enlightened by this conversation and desires to connect with you, Carla. So please let us know all of the places and any resources that you have to share.
Yeah, you can go to our website at wealthworthwithin.com. There's a contact page. If you're ready to hire a CFO, we would love to talk to you about your needs and how we might be able to meet them. If you're not quite ready to hire a CFO, we have a newsletter with actionable steps and insights that we share. So make sure to sign up for that on our homepage. And then, if nothing else, we put a ton of educational video content and resources on social media at LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. You can find us at Wealth Worth Within and tell us what you think about it, like what kind of content you want to see. And we will love to produce that and just help empower you around your financial management of the business.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate you coming in and sharing your gifts in this realm that is definitely not my area of expertise. And that's what we're all about here at Entrepreneur School is showcasing all of the different strategies and different pieces of your business and the experts that people can find to connect with to get the support that they need.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate having this conversation. Hopefully people enjoy it and start to get tuned into their numbers even more so.